Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Dr. Psych Mom Show. Today, I'm going to be talking about midlife crises in women. And this was, obviously, I've addressed midlife crises in general. I talked about this in a recent episode. But guys are always interested to hear about how their wives are uniquely experiencing aging, as the terrifying thing of men's existence is that women age. Not that they give a shit about the bodies changing as women think, but that the woman is not going to want to have sex, right? I mean, you obviously understand that if you're a listener, that this is a major problem that many men face, is that they still have a sex drive, their wife doesn't, and our culture fetishizes monogamy. That was cynical. We have a monogamous culture. But anyway, and I like monogamy. Like, don't get me wrong, monogamy's fine, but it used to be very different in this regard. You know, if somebody wanted a separate life, you know, if a woman didn't want to have sex anymore, then it was understood that wasn't a marriage anymore, and so he did what he wanted on the side. And that was that, and that seems to be more practical from my perspective, and I think from anybody's perspective, such as if you're a woman who likes to play tennis, the guy stops liking to play tennis, well, you're not going to go into your grave never playing tennis again. You're going to find another partner, but apparently, you know, it's not thought like that with sex. So whatever, I guess I could explore. I already explored polyamory in an earlier episode, but whatever. I mean, it's not like people are just going to start doing that because I say so, like going and finding another tennis partner, as it were. So I still have to make episodes like this for the foreseeable future. Okay, so midlife crises in women. And by the way, you should subscribe because the next one is going to be about, I realized some men were having a logic error. They were assuming that all women have responsive desire if they don't have spontaneous desire. That's wrong. Maybe I misspoke somewhere around the line. There's some women that have no desire. And this relates to the question, are you done yet? So if a woman says, are you done yet in bed, there are many things to be taken from that, many learning opportunities in that sentence, and I will explore them all with you in the next subscriber episode, which is going to come out tomorrow, and is something titled Responsive Desire, Are You Done Yet? Whatever. All right, anyway, back to midlife crises. So how does a midlife crisis look in women versus men? Well, women's estrogen goes down. You can refer back to female biology across the lifespan, as well as how women's bodies and brains change in their 40s, 2 podcast episodes, as well as I discuss it in posts. And the estrogen drops. They no longer give a shit. That's the caretaking hormone. They think you could make your own fucking dinner and take care of yourself, honestly, because she's done enough of caretaking through her lifespan. And if you can kind of roll with this change, then you're going to be in a lot better place. Because quite honestly, you know how to make your own dinner. And to you, it's really just symbolically means that, my wife doesn't give a shit about me, which I understand is bad. But it's not like she fully doesn't give a shit about you. You've just really taken a back burner. Yes, I know that's funny because you say you've been in the back burner since the children were born, but now there's another oven, there's another stove she bought, and it's situated behind the first stove, and now you're on the back burner of the back stove once she goes through, starts, being in her 40s and 50s. So what does she instead think about? She thinks frequently about the entire meaning of her life and whether it's been too devoted to the children. That's a big one, especially because around this time, the children are in their worst phase of being teenagers and they're nasty to talk to and they don't really like to talk. They don't like to hang out. Periodically, they say something extremely hurtful to add to the fun. And so your wife, who has given her entire life to the children, I don't care if she worked or she didn't work, her mental life was completely devoted to the children either way. She feels that they are ungrateful and was this really everything? She had those shining moments with young children. Now they're replaced by these people who barely speak and sometimes are nasty to boot, and then she starts to feel bad. Even if she has a relationship that's wonderful with your teenagers, then it's even worse because they're going to leave the house. And then still she gets that feeling, what was all of this for? Because it used to be, by the way, evolutionarily, that by the time that the woman was done having her own babies, her oldest child was having babies. So she was kind of always in caretaking mode, and then there's really no big philosophical things to worry her because, like, it's all the same life, you know? Like, there's no big period where your entire life was devoted to caretaking, then your kids leave the house, and then in some situations, you're never really going to be that involved with any grandkids that they do have. They may not even have them, and either way, it's going to be a good 10 years, if not more, until they do, because times have changed so dramatically, you know, and people have children later and later, they move away, etc. We have fewer children, all of these things. So now she has to kind of reckon with what is her life going to be about without the children around. And so what does she frequently go to? Career. You know, career is a big one, going back to school, figuring out the meaning of her life. Now, there's some women that do not want to do this. If they want to do this, then you're kind of in a good situation because you could be very helpful. You could be supportive. You could be practically, financially supportive. You could be instrumentally supportive, and you could be emotionally supportive. So good. People change and grow, as I've discussed numerous times. It should not have to be that I tell you that. You know, that's a thing to observe in the environment. People change and grow and age. And this is an adaptive way for your wife to deal with the fact that she doesn't have kids in the house, or potentially will not have kids in the house anymore. And even if your kids are in elementary school, she could go through a midlife crisis because they're away more. They have just more activities. They're not as dependent. And she could see the writing on the wall is that she can't make her whole life about them, because that's going to be a fool's errand, because then, you know, they grow and they're growing every minute. So, and anyway, so her estrogen goes down. Her realization that the kids cannot be her reason for living goes up. This means frequently she's going to reimagine many things. Career is a big one. Sometimes spiritually, like religious-wise, she changes. Sometimes she focuses on the marriage and how much the marriage sucks and it isn't fulfilling and whatever. There are some situations where a woman will become so depressed that she is misremembering everything and rewriting history. But in the majority of cases, as I've said numerous times, there are, in fact, true empathic ruptures that happened in the past. And, and she just never wanted to address them because she's confrontation sensitive, or because she was pushing everything under the rug to make it a nice life while there were young children. But remember, if there's not going to be young children anymore, then she doesn't feel as tied to you, particularly if there are these massive ruptures. So the midlife crisis frequently manifests as her wanting to work deeply on the relationship or not be in the relationship anymore. And this is a period where she starts to say, you know what, I'm going to live my life for myself and not just for the children and not just for a husband. And this is a very good time to get into therapy. If you can get out ahead of this and say, I want to change and grow also, and I want to have the best marriage we can have, and I want to get into couples counseling, this is a good time to do it. When it's not really a good time, in the 50s and after, then she's kind of done. It's all jump the shark. Then the kids are fully out of the house, and she don't want to sit down with you and a couples counselor. She doesn't really give a shit. There's no reason, because what family are you keeping together? Both men and women can find working on the family unit to keep an intact family to be a very big motivator. But once the kids have truly left, then it's not as much of a thing. What else can be in the midlife crisis? Well, the woman's looks are changing. So if she was a very attractive woman who was very tied emotionally to the identity of being a very attractive woman, then, it all kind of jumps the shark in your 40s. You could keep it going a little bit. So there are some female equivalents of the guys that I see much more frequently who insist to me that they're in the best shape of their lives, and very well may be, but they do still die, as everybody does, but they just don't want to reckon with that. So they're kicking that can down the road with the supplements, with the testosterone, with the lifting, with the running, with all of this stuff. I see that a lot more with guys whose bodies have not suffered the vicissitudes of childbirth or the drop in estrogen. So it's easier for them than for women to kick it up to the same level. But there are women, I work with a lot of wealthy people, so there are people have lots of resources, infinite resources. So the women have a hormone cocktail too, and they have the gym, and they have the personal trainer, and then they got the other personal trainer, and they have all this shit, right? So they could keep it going, but they see the writing on the wall. And that's why, by the way, just as a brief tangent, that's why it's so good not to make like everything about your kids' looks, and not to make like looks like a superhero huge part of your family values, because if like, especially of a daughter, and she thinks like her whole worth is being like cute, this isn't to say you can't say you're so beautiful, you're so pretty, but like if that's the number one thing, which most parents don't do nowadays, but still, just as an aside, this may have happened to your wife too, that from the time she was little, everything was about her being so pretty, so pretty, so pretty. Well, yeah, then what happens when you lose that? Because the most wonderfully worked out, hair done, expensive looking woman still isn't 25, right? And that's just, if you've had everything about being the hottest girl in the room, you can't be the hottest girl in the room when you're 45 years old. You just can't, unless you're like Sophia Loren. I don't even know. So if everything was about being hot for your wife, then you got to have some real deep empathy how that shit is changing. Like it's really changing, and you just can't get the same attention. And if a lot of your life, and this is more relevant for women again that are that had an identity that was very much predicated on their looks, may even have made money with their looks, not in a bad way, but like any woman who had any history of modeling or like even honestly pharmaceutical sales, like the occupations that are predicated on being good looking. So she's gonna be upset. It seems so ephemeral. It seems fleeting in retrospect. And a good book that I recently read, I don't remember the title, but it was by Lisa Taddeo, the same woman that wrote that book that I told you about, Three Women. Well, she has a short stories, and I recently read it, and it really does a good job of getting into the mind of aging women. This is like her favorite thing to write about, it seems, who no longer feel as attractive and are grappling with that existential crisis of no longer being the woman where everybody's heads turn when you walk into the room. That's like a really big deal for a lot of women, and men don't notice it because they still think their wife is so beautiful. And she may still be beautiful, but she does not feel young and beautiful with all of the power that goes along with that. And of course, there's bad things that go along with that too, such as unwanted attention, etc. But, it's a big change. It's a big change when it goes away. So this is a big one that men do not fully understand. Another thing is waning fertility. If being fertile was part of your self-conception as a woman, and then you're noticing that your cycles are getting shorter and you are having perimenopausal symptoms, that's a big part of your identity. You may not have wanted another baby, but the idea that you would find it very hard to have one and may not be able to have one anymore is going to be a big deal for women. So a lot of times it does happen. This is not just in TV, because I've seen this in TV like 20 times, where like a woman in her 40s skips her period, because your cycles get irregular as you age, because you don't ovulate every cycle. And so she takes a pregnancy test thinking she's pregnant, but instead when she goes to the doctor says, actually, you're in the early stages of menopause, and then she has like a midlife crisis, pretty much, which is what this is about, this episode, and which you may not remember anymore because I'm talking about so many things. But yeah, so the waning fertility, your looks changing, the entire caretaker role changing, all of this stuff is like super important, and it's stuff that men don't really think about because they don't usually predicate themselves on being like a hot, fertile caretaker. Like, I mean, that's like not a male self-conception. It's just not. And so you got to think about these things. And then, of course, what does happen? Listen, most women don't cheat. They really don't. I've told you over and over, 13% of women, 20% of men. So more men cheat, and not a lot of people cheat in America. But if a woman's gonna cheat, sometimes it happens around now because she wants to feel alive again. She wants to feel her old sense of feeling like she could get a guy, that she's super attractive, that somebody's really into her. She's frequently depressed at this age, biologically as well. And you get a dopamine rush of a new interest. This doesn't even have to be a physical affair. Frequently it's an emotional affair, but this is something I see around this timeline is women start flirting, or they start to talk to somebody or something like that. Women that otherwise never would have thought about being unfaithful. So that is also something that happens. It's not frequent, but it can happen. And also, another thing that happens too is that the women, as they change and as they grow, they may decide that they want like a whole different life. I've seen this one too. And again, with more financial resources, this is more possible. Not just a different job, but like a whole different life. Like now they want to travel, or now they want to live abroad, or now they want to like work fully in like, philanthropy, or they want to travel to Africa and help out, the children, or whatever, like some big humanitarian thing. This is a big thing that I see too, and this is a whole, like basically like the self-concept changes a lot from I am a mother of young children to I am going to help the world. So there was a quote, there's a book about menopause, Flash Count Diary by Darcy Steinke, and there was a quote in it because she talks, there's lots of quotes, so also lots of analogies with like menopause and other species. It's a pretty good book. Sometimes it, it meanders through the daisies, but anyway, the point was there was some quote that I don't remember exactly, but it was, as a woman ages, her ears turn from the cries of her children to the cries of the world, right? So she takes her caretaking efforts, if she doesn't have grandchildren, which many don't, or even still if they do, but most women will focus on their own grandchildren. But if they don't have any, there's this whole time, as I've just said, between, when your kids are out of the house and when you have grandkids nowadays, which there didn't used to be. And so many women will get really involved with church, with synagogue, with humanitarian efforts that are secular, with politics, with whatever. They want to help the world. This is another one where if the guy is still interested in his old stuff, like making money and playing golf, then she's going to find him to be shallow and hard to understand. So this would be another thing to talk about productively in couples counseling if you get there. So these are kind of the ways that a female midlife crisis differs. And it's interesting to think about stuff that you knew already from this and stuff you didn't, stuff you think applies to your wife and stuff that you don't. Now remember, most women aren't going to be like, hey, I'm having like massive existential discomfort because a lot of my identity was centered around being sexually viable. And when I went into Walmart the other day, I didn't get looked at by any guy under the age of 45, and it was extremely disconcerting. She's not going to say that. But you can tell by like the avidity with which she is like following people on TikTok who are like, promoting youth serums and shit, or if she's brought up plastic surgery, or if she's looking at herself frowningly in the mirror all the time, you could tell. And a lot of times guys very, very much underestimate how much this looks change and loss of youth and loss of feeling attractive to men outside, in the universe. Paradoxically, that can lead to an affair that a woman never would have had as a younger woman, when she felt that she had so many options, a surfeit of options. And now, as you're going out in the world and fewer men are looking, some women start to miss it, despite having said how terrible it was before. And this is something that, again, they're not going to verbalize because they may not verbalize much, and or they may think that it's shallow, or that you would take it as shallow. So this is one to think about. And can you help? Many men would say, can I help by telling her how beautiful she is? It's nice, but it's not the same thing. It's just really not the same thing as it wouldn't be for you. Yeah, it's great if your wife, thinks that you're handsome. But if some random ass woman stopped you and said you were handsome, you would get a different thrill from that. And it's no different for a woman, obviously. All right. Well, hope you got a lot out of this. Please do subscribe. You will like the next episode on responsive desire versus zero desire. And I'll talk to y'all later.